back to the Allegheny Northern in N-scale, and we're going to pick up pretty much right where we left off last week's video, and that is me telling you about the official Allegheny Northern shop on Redbubble, where you can get your official Allegheny Northern merchandise. Check out the link below down in the description, take you right to the site, and everything that you purchase from there. Not only do you get cool Allegheny Northern gear, but you help this channel continue to grow and expand, and you also help by expanding the hobby, because people will ask you, what's the Allegheny Northern? And then you get to explain what it is, show them the video, and hopefully get somebody else interested in the hobby. So today we're talking about track work. If you recall in the last video that, well, the manned helper service worked fine, we had a series of technical issues that stopped it from being the total demonstration that it needed to be, and that we had issues with the track, and we had issues with the tractive effort, motive power. And so going back, I know that in general, a locomotive by itself can handle about 6 to 7 cars, depending on which cars they are and what wheel sets are on, up that 2% grade. So if you take the number of cars times the number of locomotives, you can kind of figure out what you're going to get up the hill. That's some very basic math just to get up the hill. And of course, we had 4 locomotives on there, and we were running about 40 cars, and the math didn't quite add up. Now, what ends up happening is that's not necessarily, that's a general rule of thumb. It's not necessarily how it works. You can get a few more cars when you're doing a push-pull operation like helper service or distributed power. It just has to do, that's a whole lot of physics there as to how that works and where the in-train forces are. But in general, that is how I figure out whether or not I have enough locomotives. And knowing whether or not my locomotives have traction tires on them and that sort of thing also helps. But today we're talking not about distributed power or large trains. We're just talking about trains in general, and that is getting over your layout and having good track work. And so I take the FAFO approach to track work. And if you don't know what FAFO stands for, you should probably look that up, but not on a work computer, because that is the method that I use. And the first step in putting my track together is the FA part. And that's the fun part, because that's where I take my sectional track and I start clipping it together until I get something that looks like what I want the industry or the main line to look like. And then I continue to FA until I get everything running the way I want it. So, and when I say running, I don't mean actually running trains over it. I mean just getting from point A to point B. And after that, we do the FO part. And that's where we find out what parts of the layout work and what parts don't. Now, for the most part, we can typically look at the track and go, yep, that's a good install, or holy crap, what is that? Now, the holy crap moments are basically eliminated by using the unit track. The unit track snaps together pretty much only in one way. Yes, you can misalign the joiners, but as long as you don't do that, it's pretty much going to align in one way. Now, it does have some play in it. So if you're running a very long straight run, it can walk on you, and it won't be perfectly straight. It'll kind of be a little wonky one way, maybe wonky another way, and it kind of looks like you worked in a little bit of a curve. Depending on how much curve you have in it will depend whether or not it's going to run. You'll find that out when you get around to that section with your trains. In general, you want to keep it as straight as possible when you're on the straights, and when you're doing a curve, you want to keep that curve as tight as possible. To tell whether or not you've got it lined correctly, just look at the spacing of your roadbed. So between each of the sections, you will have a little joint, right there. And if that joint is equal spaced on all sides, then you've got pretty much guaranteed that you've got your track in alignment. If that joint looks like it's forced, or whether the gap is bigger. So let me take you right over here just for a second, give you a kind of an example. So if you look at this curve here, you can see that I've kind of got a bit of a gap here and then at this section right here, it's a lot tighter. So that tells me that this track is just a little bit out of alignment. And so what I'll do is I'll move that track to get it to about an equal space, just like that. And that minor difference actually can make a fairly big difference in how your layout runs. So that's the very first step that I'm going to do when I go through. Now, let me just take you down here for a quick second and show you one other thing. And this is more of a specialty case, but like if we look at this bridge, we can see that this bridge section is coming down, this bridge section is coming down, so this bridge actually probably needs to be about there, right? So it needs shimmed. So yes, your train's probably going to run over that, but you've got a dip there that you're probably not going to want, so we're going to shim that and make that level the way it's supposed to be, okay? So this is my go back stage because I've decided that this is how I want this to look, right? So this is how this part of the layout is going to look. And now that I know that, I can go ahead and I can go back and make that adjustment. But to find all the other little things that are going to be going on in this layout and things that may stop my train from getting to the end and back, and I like to just do a real quick visual. So first I'm looking for my track to make sure it's not kinked, to make sure that their rail joints are all in place. You can do this real easy by simply taking your fingers and putting them on the track and running them along. Yes, you're going to have to clean your track afterwards, but it will give you a real good indication of whether or not you've got any missed or misaligned or missing joints. And when you do that, you may feel some bumps. I can feel that there's a little bit of a bump here going onto this bridge. Now, I'm not going to panic about that just yet because I also know that this is out of alignment. So when I bring this up, if that joint bump goes away, then it's good, which it didn't. And if it doesn't, then we can look at, do I have a bad joiner here? Or is the rail just not coming into an alignment? And then we'll take a look at that. Now, the next thing we're going to look at here is any place that I have soldered on feeders. So someplace like here. And what I want to do is I want to take my finger and I just want to run it over. The solder should be on the side of the rail. Ideally, it's under the rail. It's a little harder to do with Kato track. But, and I want to make sure that there's no bump, because if there's a bump, then I'm going to get a bump from my locomotive, which could cause a derailment, or my cars are going to bounce over it. And these joints are pretty smooth, so I'm not too worried about that. The solder's all on the side, not on the top. But I do feel that this wire insulation has bubbled up just a bit here, so that might catch a snowplow or something. So I'm probably going to just pull that back with a knife. Okay, so that's my next step. I'm going to take you down here because I know that I've got a bad solder joint here. Okay, so this solder joint right here is a little bit high, and I can feel it, and it's actually not even a solder joint. There's some solder here, but then there's insulation here. And so if I take a car, and I'm just going to grab one from back here, and if I set it right on the track, and hopefully you can see it, but you'll see the car bounce over it. You can kind of hear it. See how the car kind of bounces there? Yeah, you don't want that. That's an impediment to your operation, and it just means that the car runs over it, but like see right there, it got hung up, right? You don't want to get hung up on that. So we're gonna go ahead and we're just gonna. You can do two things. You can solder it. You can resolder it. So just reheat it and solder it down. Or you can very carefully take a set of files and file it down that way as well. Here's a nice little flat file. And these are simply just a model set of files. There you go. Testers made these ones, needle files. Now, when you do this, understand that you run the risk of damaging your rail surface. So in this case, what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to go get my soldering iron and I'm just going to remove this solder. That way I'm not sanding down the joint. Okay, so that's the next step, right? I'm just going to go around and I'm going to fix all the open and obvious little bumps and nicks, and then we're going to set my train in motion, because there's no better way of finding an area where you may FA'd just a little bit too much. And believe me when I tell you that running your locomotives and running a train, especially a longer train, is the best way to FO whether or not you have a error in your track work. Okay, so let's go ahead. I'm going to fix the obvious issues, and then we'll come back and start the train. Okay, so we are in the find out portion of our FAFO run here. And so basically what we're doing is this is the first train that's going over the new track, and I still have a lot of trains sitting on the helix, and there's no helpers, so we're going to try to get him. I think he's close to being off the helix. He's getting there. But, all right, so I think we got enough rolling here. Now, what I want to do, basically, is I just want to run my train. And, like I said, it's the first time it's run on the layout on this section, so I don't know what I don't know. So, in my mind, I have prepared everything. So, I've got enough feeders everywhere. I have looked at the track to make sure everything is smoothed out. All my joints are good. And that I haven't missed any sort of, important detail like that. And so to prove that, we're going to run this train. It's got 30 some cars on it, I guess. And I do want to stay just a bit ahead of it to make sure I got my turnouts thrown correctly. But you can get an idea here of what we're trying to do. And I don't necessarily want to run it at full throttle. I don't want to run it necessarily at, stop motion speed either. I just kind of want to get it going and see what I find out. This is a good place to find out if, turnouts don't line correctly, especially since I'm using a lot of reused track. And basically, I'm just looking for problems. And the goal is to be able to run a train and, be able to walk away from it and have it keep on doing what it's doing. And if you can't do that, then you need to go back and you need to look at your layout. And so I see right here, I'm bouncing over something. And as I zoom in, I see that there's a piece of something on a track. It's probably glue or something. So we want to get that off, right? Like I don't want to have that on there. So it's good to note things like that because I missed it. And obviously each of those cars didn't. And even though they're going over it, the likelihood of that causing a derailment, pretty freaking high. So, okay, so we're going to let this train go. And actually, I don't remember what the turnouts look like down here. So let's get the turnouts down here, make sure they're lined up correctly. And we were lucky. They'd have been just fine. But here we are coming around behind the intermodal yard. And so the upper level is going to look like very mountainous terrain once we get out of the port. But the track, for the most part, is going to be level. And we're going to make the variations in the scenery, not in the track like we did on the lower level, which is going to result in, I think it's going to be a lot easier running because I'm not dealing with grades. And I still think it's going to look pretty realistic, so we'll see how that plays out. I mean, they end up having to introduce some grades for some excitement, but as you can see, it doesn't have to necessarily be level for there to be some degree of scenic excitement. And yeah, I really probably should have something there supporting that, since that's two separate bridges, so. Alright, I see a little bit of a bump there. I don't know if you see that, but that could be an issue. And I think it's probably related to this bridge. Pulling down on it. We need to get that fixed. Oh, you know what? Actually, that's where the power feeders are. It's causing a bump. Oh, and we got a derailment. So something caused it to derail there. It was one of these bumps here. Okay, so we need to come back and take a look at that. I'm pretty sure it happened right here. And I don't know why that's sitting high, so we're going to take a look at that. Alright, so we got two issues we're looking at right now. Oh, you know what? Actually, it was right here it jumped. It jumped over because there's like some extra solder or something on there. I can see the car's rocking. Okay, so we'll take a look at that. shot backwards of the train, and let me do this because it's gonna be cool. Here's a long shot of the train. Yep, got another derailment. All right, let's see what happened. No, it does not like this S curve. I wonder if that's just. Yeah, look how that's all bound up. See that? So that is not going to work as a track configuration. See how that's all. I mean, yeah, it does not like that at all because those couplers are not letting it move. Okay, so this is the find out part, which is interesting. I would not have guessed that. But the tight shank couplers there do not like the S curve. Okay, good to know. So we've added a very small section of straight track there to sort of take that S curve out. Let's see if that's going to do it. That S curve isn't there for any particular reason. I just wanted to have a little bit of variation in the track so we could look down and see that the train's kind of snaking through some terrain. And yes, I could just simply change out the coupler shank length on these locomotives, but I don't know how many other locomotives have that same short connection, and that might just be, that's not really solving the problem necessarily. It might just be creating a problem because I'll end up with another derailment somewhere else. Also, S-curves are kind of rough. So, if you were doing an S-curve and you got it on a grade or you traveling at higher train speeds, S-curves are a bad physics problem for trains. So anyway, okay, that resulted in a few other little changes to make all the track line up correctly. But okay, once again, wasn't married to it because it was just a detail to sort of add some variation. Now, the nice thing is, sectional track, I just go over to my box of track and I find a piece that fits, and boom, and we're up and running again. So, okay. The other thing I didn't do was I didn't clean this track first, so finding a dead spot is a real possibility. Oh, and I realized my track realignment knocked me off my bridge pier. That's not good. So there's a cool little bridge. It's going to be a cool little bridge once I get it built up. Hopefully I don't fall. I don't want to drop this on the ground. Oh, it's leaning. Oh, yeah, we're going to get stuck there. Alright, I need to fix this before we frickin' come back the other way. I didn't see how far off the pier I'd knocked that. There we go. And that train is just keep on trucking. And there's a lot of cars on this train. I'm supposed to be watching the front end, but I'm assuming if the train's still moving, the front end's doing fine. Oh, actually, I can see it now. All right, so we gotta put the bridge back on the piers. Okay, let's come on over here. So we've come out the other side, and this is going to be the coal mine area. And so it's coming in on the main line. This is where incoming trains obviously would come in, but incoming and outgoing trains will leave the coal mine area. The tracks off to left or right, depending which way you're looking, is going to be the actual coal mine track. And yes, we do have this hooked up to a PSX ARSC, all those letters. And the idea is, so like I'm looking down the layout there and you can see the track, fitted over that gully, right? None of this foam's actually even attached yet. The track is just sitting up on top of it. So obviously we need a little bit of work there, and yeah, might hit that extra screw, might not. Nope, right around it. Oh yeah, I did hit it. Thought I was gonna clear it. Okay. And so we are coming in, and this loop is large enough to handle a 30 car train. I don't know if we actually would have gotten all 40 of the cars on though. So that could have been a thing. Yeah, you know what? It'd have been pretty close because that turnout's way down here. So I think we could have gotten the whole 40 car train on. And then let's make sure that it automatically reverses. There it is. And there it goes. Okay, well before we hit the stop button, before we actually send the train back, I am going to go fix that bridge because I don't want to have that train fall off that bridge. So let me go do that, and then we'll be right back. And I do like to run the train both directions because that way I know, there might not be an issue one way, but there might be an issue the other way. So let's okay. So there is the tail end of my train, and I am working her back around the backside of the layout here, behind the steps, and you're not missing anything back there. It's just a track, single track, just comes back around. And so, okay, so the main line now appears to work. So I can run trains, which is good. And I rebuilt, I moved my piers over so that they actually support my bridge. Now that, see, what happened was beforehand, this was closed, this track here was closer over, and then this track S-curved that direction. So this whole thing was shifted, that way. Well, now, with that realignment and those added sections, it goes this way. Okay, up here sitting just a bit high. Well, the other side's sitting just a bit low. I don't know which way it goes, but maybe get that support a little better, something like that. On a doer. So actually, I do need a pier there. All right, much gentler S-curve here. Now, yes, there is a siding, and yes, we will test the siding, but not on this run because I want to bring this train back exactly the way it came in because that's the track I'm testing. So, as torturous as it will be, I will have to run another train to test the other. Now, when I do my tests, I run the same train, right? And then I will go through a process of running big locomotives, little locomotives, long cars, short cars, all the cars that I could possibly run just to see how the train, how the track handles it. And, I expect there to be little issues like, well, not like moving the pier, but like that S-curve, okay? So I would have drawn that S-curve on a plan, and I'd have figured, yeah, I could probably handle it, no issue, not realizing the short shank on those couplers was going to cause issue. I had that all laid in track, flex track, and then been majorly screwed because it all been tacked down and had to move it all. But with sectional track, I just pulled it apart and set the new piece in and off and running. Didn't have to re-glue anything, didn't have to re-nail anything. But the sectional track doesn't look real. You can make it look real. See right there, that's where that derailment happened. See how that track was hiding? That little gap there. It's hard to see actually, but it was there. So that's actually this foam sitting higher than this foam, which I don't know why, but we'll get that fixed. So a couple of issues here with the foam. This foam's not glued in, so it's all loose anyway. That's probably not helping. And there's another, once again, there's another bump in the foam, but see, it's not glued in, so it's not really a bump, it just wasn't sitting. So, okay, so the areas that aren't supported have problems, and the areas that are supported have problems, or don't have problems, which makes total sense. Let's come down here, find out where that little goop was on the track. Yep. You know what that is? That is liquid nails. And it must have been from when I was gluing foam. So I'm just going to scratch that right off. Should be good to go. I'm not worried about that train on that particular part of the track, so I'm going to let it come all the way back. But what I do want to do is I do want to come over here and preemptively throw this turn out. So it'll come across this crossing, and then it'll come down here and run this main line. And I actually only worked on this track until here. So that's as far as I'm going to take my train. But let's make sure she's all good and watch the train run. We are coming up a slight incline here, so I'm curious to see if these two locomotives will keep pulling all those cars. I can hear them kind of sliding a little bit. So we'll see once it gets into the curve. Looks like she might be able to do it. That's fun. Okay, gonna do the crossover. Oh, and a trip pin. That's no good. All right, oh, come back, come back, come back. Alright, so I don't know if that hit something there or if it was just a bad trip pin. Might have just been a bad trip pin, but we'll check that out. And we're back to alright, this is pretty much going to end us right here. And that grade down is a little rough. I may try to ease that out. Oh, we're definitely heading down a way I don't want to take this train. And my throttle shut off, so that's majorly inconvenient. Okay, I'm going to stop right there. Okay, so that is my method of installing track on the Allegheny Northern. And it truly is a FAFO method. I just, start clicking track together. I have a rough idea in my mind, like where that S curve was. I knew I wanted that track to snake there a little bit, but I didn't necessarily have a exact design in mind. I just knew kind of what I wanted it to do. And so, I was able to go to the hobby shop. I was able to look at the pieces that Cato offered, and I was able to say, okay, that is the piece that I want there. That's the one I'm going to use. And so then I just started clicking together, and there were some things I didn't think about, and they needed adjusted. So that was the two parts there. That's how you F around, and that's how you find out. And now that I've found out, I've got a couple of issues I know that I've got to go take care of, and some foam work that needs to be done. So I'm going to spend the rest of the afternoon getting those areas cleaned, and then I know that I can run basically, well, technically if I use the Helix, I can run a full train up here now. But I'm going to go back. I'm going to start working on this section. I did a little bit already, but it needs more. Because I got a wire for my foam cutter now, so I can actually go back and trim those up. Some areas like this here, you can see that that's just too much of an angle, and so I can't, because I'm pinned here with this, I can't really drop it off too much more. But what I can do is I can ease this and start bringing this grade down here just a little tiny bit to match up a little bit better. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. But that's how I like to do my track work. That way I get everything clipped in. And you can see, like, as you look over there, so like that's, that I can't leave it like that. It's just part of the process. I haven't gotten to getting it fixed yet. Once I do, everything will be able to run on this loop as well. Hope this was helpful for you. Hope this gives you a little idea of, you don't have to have the entire plan figured out. You can kind of work your way through it, just like I did, and run some trains in the process.